The model for large-scale change encompasses 7 steps. It begins with the identification of the need for change. You can't do large-scale change in general. You need to have a topic, something to focus on. I want to transform care for people with dementia in the Northwest would be an example of a need for change. The pieces of what needs to change to make that vision come about then need to be framed. The way you describe it, the reason why we need to change that, has to connect and engage the hearts, the minds, the values of the people who do the work. Because they then have to go on to make some pragmatic change. As a leader of large-scale change, you can't change anything, really. You can only engage others in the process of change. And that method of engaging has to do with the way you frame it. Once the change is made, you can then hold that up as a sign of progress to attract further interest. And you start back into the cycle again then of framing, engaging, making change, attracting interest, framing, engaging, making change, attracting further interest. You may go around that loop 100 times, 1,000 times in a large-scale change effort. After some time, you reach one of three outcomes, if you will. The change, the vision is either accomplished, it's a sustainable norm. That only happens about 15% of the time, the research says. The other 2 things that can happen is that you hit a plateau. You get so far, you get a couple pockets of things that are better here and there, but you didn't quite get to the vision that you were at. That happens a lot. The third possible outcome is that it just runs out of energy. Resources are withdrawn. Something happens that just kind of negates the entire effort. After some time, you'll have to live with the consequences. It'll be the intended consequences and the unintended consequences. You won't know about that until it actually happens. Of course, try to predict. Of course, try to have things not go wrong. But don't let the fear of that freeze you so that you don't take any activity at all. Because in the end, 10, 15, 20 years later, someone else may come along and identify that same need for change and build on what you've done or take it down and start all over again. I think the large-scale change model stands the test of time simply because people are people. The ways we work together or fail to work together within teams or organizations or across organizations really hasn't fundamentally changed in the last 50, 60 years or so. Long ago, people might be counted upon to do as they're told simply because someone was the boss, and you could make a large-scale change happen just by having enough power to exert over people. But in modern organizations, certainly for the last 50 years, professionals reserve the right to decide what they think is right or wrong and how they're going to work on a moment-by-moment and day-by-day basis. And so the need to frame and engage people's hearts and minds to get that distributed leadership and all those other things that go into the principles it has not changed, and I don't see it changing. I don't have any reason to believe it's going to change fundamentally in the next couple of decades. Is the large-scale change model more relevant today than when it was developed in 2008? Well, I can't really be sure. I think it is, simply because it was developed in a context of a need for better working across organizational boundaries, better joining up of health and social services, better joining up of even health services within health services. That was a need 8 or 9 years ago, and I think it remains to be a need. As resources are constrained, as the population gets older, the need for that just becomes more acute. I don't think it goes away. So yes, I think it certainly is as relevant as it was in the days when it was first developed. Given that people are people, that organizations are still organizations, and that nothing fundamentally has changed in the literature on large-scale change, I don't think I'd develop the model any differently today than it was back in 2007, 2008. On the other hand, George Box, the famous statistician, once said, "All models are wrong. Some models are useful." And what he meant by all models are wrong is that all models are necessarily incomplete. I mean, a model can't possibly capture all of reality. If I was to tell you everything there is to know about large-scale change and all the steps you have to go through, the model would have 1,000,000 steps and you wouldn't be able to comprehend it. So you make some compromises and you focus in on some things that you think are helpful for the people that are going to be using the model. You want it to be useful. Something that I have tended to add whenever I teach the model is a little bit, and I guess if I were going to, I might put a little strip at the bottom of the model that says something like establish positive patterns of behavior. And what do I mean by that? The large-scale change happens more effectively, more efficiently, more sustainably in a context that has certain patterns. Patterns about relationships, where there's trusting relationships, there's honesty in the relationships among the individuals and the organizations, where decision making is clear and transparent and fair, where power is shared and used for the common good rather than for the individual good, where conflict is surfaced and dealt with in a positive, constructive manner, and where learning is supported. These 5 patterns are something that I talk about a lot when I talk about the large-scale change model, in the sense of it's a sort of an undercurrent. It's when those things are there and they're positive, it makes large-scale change easier. When those things are there, or when those things aren't there, or where they act in a negative way, they make large-scale change sometimes nearly impossible. So I guess the one thing that I might add to the model would be that thing about establishing positive patterns of behavior. But as I say, I think the model itself stands the test of time simply because it is as it is. People are as they are, and there hasn't been any fundamental shift in that.